Good morning. I'm going to read from Monday, September 8th in Tangerine. I hope you have your book with you. I hope you're all doing well today. Happy Tuesday. We are on page 97. It doesn't have a page number on it. It's the beginning of part 2. All right. The first day of school, take 2. Mom drove me into Tangerine this morning at 7:30. We drove past the lime green houses and the citrus packing plant. We passed through a small downtown area, and then pulled up to a concrete building that looked like a block-long post office. We parked across the street, and I reminded her, "I'll be at soccer practice until 5. I hope." "I hope so too," Mom replied. "Look, I really should go in with you this morning. There must be transfer forms for me to sign." "No, there aren't any forms for you to sign. All I need is my computerized class schedule from Lake Windsor Middle. No forms, no mothers." Mom was staring across the street and not liking what she saw. There were 2 small groups of guys karate kicking at each other outside the building. There were larger groups too, menacing-looking gangs, just standing around watching the karate kickers go at it. Mom said, "Look at that. Why isn't this area being supervised?" "Hey, that's no big deal. That's just what some guys do, Mom." "At the entrance to this school? What kind of first impression is that?" "They do that wherever they are. Lighten up. I'll see you at 5. "Yeah, if you live." I walked around the karate kickers and the gangstas and pushed open a heavy wooden door. I saw that I could go straight toward the first floor classrooms, or I could climb the stairs on the left toward what seemed to be the office. I went left and started up the worn marble stairs, thinking how unusual it was to find stairs like these in Florida. For that matter, the whole building was unusual. I hadn't been on the 3rd floor of anything since we moved here. The school's office was located at the top of the first flight. The principal herself was standing just inside the glass doors. She walked right up to me and said, "I'm Dr. Johnson. Who are you?" "Paul Fisher, ma'am." "And you're from Lake Windsor Middle School, I presume?" "Yes, ma'am." She took my schedule from me and read it carefully. Then she turned around and called into one of the side offices, "Teresa, come out here and take this one." A small, skinny girl with brown hair tied back into a ponytail came out of the side room. Dr. Johnson said, "This is Paul Fisher. Paul, this is Teresa Cruz. She'll be your escort for your first day at Tangerine Middle School. She'll be your escort for your second day too, if you want. After that, you'll be responsible for getting around on your own. But Teresa will continue to be a resource person for you for any questions that you might have." I said, "All right, thank you, ma'am." I paused. I don't know why, but I felt I had to say it. I said, "It's nice to be here." Dr. Johnson gave me a huge smile. "Well, it's nice to have you here." It was pretty much downhill after that. Teresa Cruz had very little or nothing to say. I followed her silently from class to class. She would introduce me quietly to each teacher. We would sit down together. I tell you, it was eerie, like a science fiction story, like I had entered some kind of mirror universe. The subjects and the class times are exactly the same as in Lake Windsor Middle, but the rooms and the people are completely different. Tangerine Middle is a tougher school, no doubt about it. I got real nervous whenever we went out into the hall. If anything's going to happen to you in a school like this, it's going to happen in the hall. One big guy took his forearm and swatted me out of the way, like I was some kind of gnat. But I didn't take it personally. I just kept my head down, followed Teresa, and went where I was supposed to go. My classes are all on the 2nd floor. Basically, the 3rd floor is entirely the 6th grade. The 2nd floor is the 7th grade, and the 1st floor is the 8th grade, with a few exceptions. The 1st floor also has the cafetorium, which, obviously, doubles as the cafeteria and the auditorium. It's pretty gross. The cafetorium has a kitchen at the near end and a stage at the far end. In between are rows of wooden tables with wooden folding chairs. It's loud in there, like in some old prison movie. Teresa stayed with me when we passed through the lunch line in the cafetorium. She even sat down with me to eat. To eat, but not to talk. I tried to get the lowdown on some of my new teachers, the inside stuff, but Teresa wasn't cooperating. I'd say something like, "So how's this Mrs. Potter for science?" And she'd say, "Pretty good." "How's Mr. Scott?" "Pretty good." And so on. I finally gave up and ate my lunch, but afterwards, I tried with the question that meant the most to me. "Do you know anything about the soccer team?" Teresa pulled back a little and actually looked at me, surprised. She nodded and said, "Oh yeah, my brother Tino plays on the team." "Yeah?" "He's an 8th grader." "Oh, yeah, he's an 8th grader?" "No, he's my twin brother. He's in 7th grade too." "Oh, well, I was thinking about going out to practice today to see if I could get on the team." Teresa thought about this. "Yeah, you could do that. Tino won't be there today, though. He was suspended. Oh, he's still suspended. Victor, Hernando, none of those guys will be there today. But I guess they'll still have practice." I knew the answer to the next question, but I had to ask it anyway. Why won't any of them be there? I want you to take a minute and think. Why would the Tangerine middle soccer team not be at school? What happened with them? Do you remember? Oh, they got into some trouble over at the carnival. Miss Bright grabbed the whole bunch of them while they were sitting here eating lunch. She brought them up to Dr. Johnson, and they all got suspended for 3 days. So they'll all be back tomorrow? Yeah, Tino, Victor, Hernando, all those guys. And they're all starters? They're who? They're starting players on the soccer team? Teresa answered with pride. Oh yeah, Victor? He's kind of like the star. Victor and Maya, they're like the 2 stars, you know? They score most of the goals. Tino scored 2 goals last year. I think Victor scored 16, and Maya scored 15. They both made the all-county team. And who's the goaltender? The goalie's Chandra Thomas. Chandra. That's a girl, right? Yeah, Chandra's a girl. Maya's a girl, too. Why don't you have a boys' team and a girls' team? Oh, what? Don't you have a boys' team and a girls' team? No, there's only one team. Boys, girls, they both can play on it. They're mostly boys, but some of the girls are good. They played in the Y League all their lives and stuff. Maya learned to play over in England. That's why she's so good. I was trying hard to process this information. I said again, "So Chandra's a girl?" Teresa seemed to be enjoying this. "Oh yeah, there's 4 girls. Chandra, Maya, Maya's cousin Nita, and Dolly. They're all on the team. Then there's Tino, Victor, Hernando, and about 10 other guys. They're good. They were 2nd in the county last year." After lunch, we went back to our routine, with Teresa only speaking when she introduced me to a teacher, but at least we had broken the ice. I was starting to get a picture of this new place, and I was glad I had come here. I'd say the most obvious difference between my new school and my old one is this. At Tangerine Middle, the minorities are the majority, and I have no problem with that. I have always felt like a minority because of my eyes. The next most obvious difference is the building itself. It's old. I have no problem with that either, except that it has a disinfectant smell that kind of gags you. The textbooks are old too, really old, and they have stuff written in them. The teachers seem to have adjusted to this by not using them much. A couple of teachers have talked about class projects and group projects that are due. I guess I'll find out about those things soon enough. I also figured out why Teresa was assigned to be my guide. We have exactly the same schedule, mostly advanced classes. My day went smoothly enough until 7th period, when I had an unpleasant surprise. My language arts teacher is Mrs. Murrow. Get this. Mrs. Murrow is married to Mr. Murrow, the head of guidance at Lake Windsor Middle. I'm going to work hard at not being noticed in that class. I don't want to risk his hearing my name and announcing, "That kid's handicapped. He needs an IEP." After the bell rang, Teresa and I walked downstairs out the back door. To the left, behind the baseball backstop, was a green scoreboard. Across the top was written, Tangerine Middle School, home of the War Eagles. We crossed over the bus lanes and headed down to a soccer field that was circled by an asphalt running track. I could see a mixed group, girls and boys, taking turns shooting the ball at a big, tall girl in the goal. I said, "That's Chandra, right?" "Yeah, in the goal, that's Chandra." "Who are these other girls?" "Who? You mean the ones standing together?" "Yeah, that's Maya and Nita. Maya's the tall one. They're cousins. They're always hanging out together." "And who's the other big girl?" "That's Dolly. Dolly Elias. Her brother Ignacio was the captain last year." Teresa pointed at her and called, "What's up, Dolly?" It was the first time I had heard her raise her voice. Dolly waved back. "Is she your friend?" "Yeah, she rides home with Louis and Tino and me." "Is Louis on the team too?" No. Louis is grown up. He's our big brother. He comes and picks us all up after practice. He picks up Hernando and Victor too." We crossed the field in front of Dolly, just as she drove a perfect corner kick, 5 feet off the ground. Oops. Teresa walked me up to a tall, powerful-looking woman in a maroon warm-up suit. She said, "Miss Sprite, this is Paul Fisher from Lake Windsor Middle School. He wants to play on your soccer team." Miss Sprite had to look down to meet my eyes. She said, "How long are you going to be with us, Paul?" 3 months, ma'am. "At least through the soccer season." "Uh-huh. Have you played soccer before?" "Yes, ma'am. All my life. I was starting goalie for my last school back in Houston." Well, let me explain something to you right from Jump Street. You can be on my team, but you're not going to take place of one of my starting players and then go back to your Lake Windsor Middle School. That's not going to happen. If you want to play backup to one of my starting players, then I'd be glad to have you." "Yes, ma'am. That's what I want to do." "Good. I need a backup in goal. Grab that red shirt and go down to the far end. We're about to start the scrimmage." "Yes, ma'am." I ran down to the far goal, set my bag down, and pulled out my protective gear. With half the starters missing, the scrimmage was kind of a joke. I only touched the ball once. Needless to say, no one scored on me. Chandra had the same kind of game down at her end. I can't describe how great it feels to have another chance. Nothing at all is going to bother me. I'll play backup to Chandra Thomas and be happy about it. Goalies get hurt. A lot. They need backups more than anybody else. I've been hurt, had my hand stepped on, had the wind knocked out of me, and someone had to fill in for me. It happens all the time. I'll get into some games, no question about that. Near the end of practice, I noticed a familiar truck pull up. It was the same pickup that I had seen at the carnival, the vintage green one with Tomas Cruz Groves, Tangerine, Florida, written on the side. A guy in jeans with a plaid workout shirt got out and walked over to Teresa. He walked with a bad limp. This had to be her brother, Louis. He had the same dark brown hair and eyes as Teresa. His head and hands seemed very large, even from where I was standing. After practice, Teresa and Dolly climbed into the front of the truck with him and drove away. I gathered up my gear and walked back into the building alone. Just as I was about to push through the wooden front door, I heard, "There you are, honey." I turned and saw Mom coming down the stairs from the second-floor office. I watched her until she put her arm around my shoulder and started to lead me out. I had a panicked feeling, like my heart stopped beating. But I managed to ask quietly, "Mom, what were you doing up there?" We crossed the road and reached our car before she replied. "Dr. Johnson's secretary told me today, Mr. Know-It-All. It turns out you do need your paperwork from Lake Windsor Middle School in order to transfer here." My heartache began to ache. My paperwork. That's right. I had to drive up to Lake Windsor and get it. You can't imagine the chaos in that office. "Mom, who did you talk to?" "Mr. Murrow, of course. He gave me your file, and I delivered it here. Now you're official." Mom unlocked the doors, and we both climbed in. I looked at her angrily. "I'm officially what?" "A student at Tangerine Middle School." "A visually impaired student? An IEP student?" "No. Nothing of the kind." I closed my eyes in despair. So what happens when the head of guidance here opens my file and sees my IEP? Nothing happens, Paul. There's no IEP in your file. Mom started the car and put it in gear. As we U-turned in front of the school, she added very carefully, Your IEP form disappeared somewhere between Lake Windsor and here. It's the kind of thing we should probably never mention again. My eyes are watering. That was really nice of his mom. We rode in silence back through the downtown area to the highway. I finally said, maybe it was an osprey. What? Maybe an osprey got hold of it. What are you talking about? You know, my IEP. Maybe it's feathering some osprey nest right now. Mom finally got the joke and smiled. That would be a nice decorating touch. Yeah. Inconsistent with the scheme of the other nests, but a nice touch. Yeah, something like that. As we headed west on Route 22, I began to feel a real sense of hope about Tangerine Middle School. After all, it was great luck getting Teresa as a guide. Getting Mom to ditch my paperwork was beyond luck. It was another miracle. Things actually seemed to be going my way. Finally, it's the Paul Fisher soccer dream. I wonder if Eric feels that way about his life here. But I wonder, too, if Mike Costello felt that way about his life when he was leaning against that goalpost.